All right, we're jumping in mid-project here on my 1970 Monte Carlo. This car was owned by a friend in high school. Him and his dad built it as a project together. Unfortunately, his dad passed away shortly after he graduated and he never touched the car again. And a few years ago, he decided to sell it to me because he knew I'd give it a good home. So I built a 350 Chevy for it, turbo 400. It's got a 12 bolt in it, 411s, posi, and working on metal and body work right now. The car was redone sometime in the early 90s by, I'm guessing, Mako, by the 2 gallons of filler that was in it. Metal had been done on it, but unfortunately it was just new patches put over top of the old rust, so I ended up cutting lower fenders off, lower passenger side quarter panel, and driver side rocker panel, and completely replacing them. The rocker I was able to buy, the quarter and fender patches I built out of 18 gauge steel. So currently just trying to straighten the body out on it. Quarters were replaced at one time. So just touching up all the filler on it and stripping the black paint off as I go. It was a vinyl top car originally. So you can see it still has the molding on it. Roof was painted when the car was redone, but a lot of it's peeled off. So I'm going to be stripping that down, and I want to take this molding off just to clean things up a little bit and repaint the roof. I just finished pulling the headliner out of it. So as you can see, it had a few critters in it over the years. So that's next, get that mess cleaned out. And also driver's side floor pan I had to replace. When it was repainted, it wasn't prepped real well. There's a number of spots on the top where the paint has peeled, and it seems to sand off really easy. The sides, and of course where the quarters were replaced, it was prepped a lot better. And the paint's a lot tougher there. You can see the rocker panel that was changed. So as you can see, the paint actually comes off pretty easy. I'm using 40 grit on my DA just to get through that black paint. It's going down to bare metal in the odd place, but not bad. I'm not trying to dig into it at all, just trying to get that black off the top. I'll go over it again with finer grits after I get it all stripped. There's places where you can see here there's filler in the car. So normally I would chemically strip something like this, but because I don't want to take this whole car down to bare metal, and there's places like that the filler is okay, I just want to leave it alone. So that's why I'm using the DA to take the paint off of it. Here, of course, where it was flaking off and there's a bit of metal showing, I'm going to have to take that down to bare, but for the most part, it's okay underneath yet. So that's pretty well got the back end done. Next will be to remove all this chrome trim from the vinyl top. and start stripping the roof and the front fenders. So the trim comes off pretty easy. It's just snapped onto plastic clips. Get underneath the trim tool, pry up gently, and it comes off not too bad. It's just on all these little plastic clips underneath, and a few of the ends are screwed down. So carry on the rest of the way around the car and we'll have that off shortly. So the top piece is all just snapped off. Once you get down here, these back corners and the ends of the other pieces are all actually bolted through the body into the trunk. So you get at them from inside, remove the nuts off the back of the studs, and then they just snap off like the rest of the pieces. I'm actually quite surprised to see when this car was painted, they did remove all the trim, so it's got black paint underneath. I thought they had just masked around it. It wasn't my friend and his dad that painted this car. It was done before they got it. They had built a drivetrain for it and took it out and drag raced it for a few years. And at the time that the car got parked, the transmission was out of it and the engine was apart to get gone through again and just never got put back together. I know when it was painted, they didn't remove the window felts. It was just masked around them. That's one of the places everything started to peel. And up here, I know it really wasn't prepped very well. A lot of that paint just falls off as soon as you hit it with the DA. Alright, so I got the back window out. I noticed when I was taking the trim off that it was a little bit loose. It didn't take much to cut through it. Just had some butyl tape on it holding it in. It's not bad for rust. Mostly just surface rust. There's a little bit of pitting there, but I think it'll clean up fine with a wire brush. Maybe some 80 grit on the DA. It'll clean up just fine and urethane the back window back in when the time comes. All the mouse nests that fell down out of the headliner are gone, so it's a little nicer to work in there now. So I guess next step is to mask off the windshield, protect it from sparks. That's one pet peeve I have with other videos I've watched on YouTube. Guys spraying sparks all over glass that they intend to keep in the car. Don't do it. You'll have nothing but pits. Once that's done, start knocking off all the studs from the trim, from the vinyl top. So I'm going to paint the roof on it when it's finished and weld up any holes. That'll be the next step. So there we go, windshield's masked off. And I wouldn't want to MIG weld beside this and send any kind of large spatter over it. It's just paper and tape. But at least if I'm doing some light grinding or sanding there, if there's any little sparks, they're not going to pit the glass up. I really didn't want to cut the windshield out of this car. It was new when the car was parked, and it's glued in really well. I've never really had any kind of luck cutting one out without breaking it when they're stuck in like this one is. Here's the studs from the vinyl top removed. Just used 80 grit discs on the 3-inch sander. A few seconds each and it took the studs off quite nicely. There's 4 screw holes to weld up yet. All the rest of them look like they'll finish up quite nicely. I do not claim to be a professional TIG welder, but that'll work. The front screw hole's welded up nice. A little bit of grinding to do, but not too bad. And apparently, the lead seam on a Monte Carlo is up here. As soon as I stepped on the pedal for the TIG, that started melting. I actually did seal the hole up. There's just a bit of a divot there. I'm going to have to put some metal-to-metal filler in. It'll clean up just fine. I thought the seam would have been down here farther. I wasn't expecting to hit it up here. All the studs are removed from the old vinyl top trim. Just used an 80 grit disc on the 3-inch sander. They cleaned off really nice, just took a few seconds each. There's the front screw hole that I welded up, all sanded down, turned out nice. Now just need to strip the rest of the roof. Ready to start stripping the roof down. I'm going to use chemical stripper for this. In theory, there's no filler in the roof of this car, but I guess we'll find out. About 5 minutes. Stripper's working quite well. I love watching a quality stripper at work. I've put a second coat of stripper on here now. I'm not sure if it showed up on camera or not, but that first can, the stuff was really dark and thick. The can had probably been open for 8 or 10 months, so I think it had kind of evaporated. I opened up a fresh can to put the second coat on, and it's way thinner, clear, and it's working way better. That first stuff took a lot of the black paint off, but it didn't get through anything below that. And this is getting right down through the layers, and you can actually see it starting to run. I'll let it sit for a few more minutes and then start scraping. I think most of the rest of the paint's going to come off this time. So that's all cleaned up now. Wiped it down with some acetone after I scooped up all the stripper off of it. That worked pretty good. There's a little bit of paint left, but it'll sand off easily. As I said before, I didn't want to strip the rest of this car because it's got a fair bit of filler in it. I mean, not a bad Chad level of Bondo, but still more than I would like. And for what I have planned for this car, there's no need to dig it all out and do all the metal on it. This thing's for driving hard and having fun. If it was going to be a show car, I'd redo it all. It took everything right down to that bottom layer of factory primer. Hardly even touched it. It didn't really start to wrinkle at all. Here's the can of paint soup that I cleaned up off of it. So that's going to go outside just in case it decides to spontaneously combust for some reason. Went over the roof with 80 grit on the DA. I started in on the trunk and discovered it had actually been repainted twice. Once when the car was still blue and then when it got changed to black. So I ended up stripping the trunk lid as well. couple spots where I thought there was some filler in the top of it. It was actually just a little spray mud on top of the one coat of blue. It was cracked up pretty bad, right down to bare metal, so I had to strip it right down so I can sand it. Now I've hit all of this with 80 grit. I was trying to get all that pink primer off that was put on over top of the original blue paint. The original paint's in decent shape. I'm not too worried about taking it all off. Just get everything smoothed out and the edges feathered. Using 40 grit on the fenders now to chew through that black and most of the pink primer, and then I'll hit it with 80 again. The reason I didn't strip the whole car before I did the bits of bodywork on it that were obvious is I'm just picking away at this, and I really didn't want the whole thing stripped down and end up having it flash rust on me. Now that I've actually got time to keep at it, I'll strip the whole car so I can get it in primer fairly soon. We've got snow on the ground now, so I'm not working outside anymore. I just stripped down the areas that were very obvious that needed some work, where there was old filler starting to lift or crack, or a new dent over top of the old bodywork.